All right, looks like we started our virtual Zoom meeting today with our ad hoc committee for the articles of agreement that we had a meeting about 2 weeks ago. We had some technical difficulties, it sounds like, with the new Google Meet. So to summarize our meeting last, we went through a lot of the items of interest, just really getting together from our perspective, Quakertown Community School District, on items that have worked well and items that can help improve the processes that are established currently. And we had talked about a lot of meetings, I think, were brought up before that we used to have that was really productive in making sure that we got information exchange between the tech school as well as our school districts, which is beneficial. So reestablishing some of those norms was mentioned, having the superintendents meet regularly, have the business managers meet regularly. So when it comes to the budget season and presentation of the budget, all the sending districts are on the same page before it's presented. So it sounds like those reestablishing norms was a good recommendation from the past that we've had. I guess broke it down simply and concisely into like sort of three major categories, if we wanted to call it. And looking at the articles of agreement, looking at the administrative functions. Another one was the finance, and the third one I listed here was educational. And that's more maybe educational and strategy. I know that, during our board meetings, we had talked about a lot of good, lots of greatness coming out of the tech school, but having a strategy and looking at what's going to be the expenditures, 4 or 5 years from now, is important as we see the growth occurring at the tech school. So talking more openly about a strategy plan is of use and helping making sure the educational needs are met from the Senate district as well as the tech schools, as well as the students. I know, Dr. Hoffman, you had mentioned on fewer presentations that we've had over the last 2 years about the upcoming new graduation requirements that I think we're already adopted as a sending school district, but making sure that the students at tech school are meeting those graduation requirements in good order. So everyone's happy at the end. So that's sort of a synopsis of, I think that meeting was only a little over a half hour. We had some good exchange. I don't want to rehash the same meeting again. Want to move forward with sort of the progress of just open discussions between ourselves, and then obviously if we have some document that we can maybe present at a future board meeting, that'd be great. But I guess just opening it up to some of the articles of the agreement. I was going to start sharing my screen. I know, Chuck, you had took a stab at some of the revisions, and I'll let you start talking to some of them, and I can elaborate too, as well as Dawn and Dr. Hoffman can elaborate as well. So let me see when you see my screen. I put a Word document together. This is the articles agreement. There's a PDF version of the articles agreement, but made it into a Word document so we can track changes. And then in these track changes had, highlighted and also in red and underlined items that could be added. So this would be, in terms of this articles agreement, was referencing the original 1962 articles of agreement, referencing said Upper Bucks Technical School. I'm not sure if they included county back then, Chuck. I'm not sure if you're aware of that or not, but I added county. But if it's not county, just keep it as Upper Bucks.
Not sure what the legal name is, but
yeah, whatever that was. I know we call it the Upper Bucks County Technical School today. And then if there's going to be a future amendment, that we just add whatever date that is or whenever it occurs. Keep in mind too, this is just our own perspective from Quakertown. If we feel when it goes to the board agrees that we should start sharing this to the other sending districts, then we can get, discussions with the other sending districts as well concerning these proposed changes. There's in the actual PDF document, it said the 10-106 with a parentheses. I don't know what that referenced, Chuck, but I crossed it out. If there was going to be an amendment, it looked like it was a typo.
yeah,
I just should be able to reference amendments.
I think there was an edit. It wasn't completely taken out, but put it in parentheses just to yeah, you got it. Just so legal can review.
Yep, understood. And then here, I put county, but if it's, the 1962 document doesn't include county, just keep it consistent, whatever the case is. I just highlighted here that the JOC in my opinion, similar to the board that we have at Quick Turn Community School District, is a governing board. We don't get into the weeds. It says oversee here, and then it's defined further in Article 5. I just highlighted this as oversee. I don't know if there's any word changes here that we want to put in there regarding the governing body as a JOC. It said, I put a D under here for situate. It said situate instead of situated. A legal deal with that. I think it's important under the definitions, and just anyone can chime in at any given time. We talk about enrollment, joint board, joint operating committee, technical school quota, school board, school district, but this is a pretty key term here to define up front. I know it's later on, it's a very short document, but to define what the superintendent of record is, that's the chief administrator. So I just use the same language that was below, but I figure it's important to have it up front. I don't know if you have any thoughts there, Chuck.
No, I think that's good. We defined it. My edit later on said very similar things, but it's good if we define it now. So up front.
Okay.
It's
Moving ahead, there's a couple changes here and there. Not many, but I think, Chuck, you're on point too. We're not lawyers. If we want to have language in here, leave it up to the lawyers to figure out what that language is. I agree with you on that. I guess in this particular item 4C regarding capital expenditures for buildings and equipment incidentals, your recommendation here to put wording in for approval from school districts over a certain amount.
correct. And again, I would let legal go ahead and make sure that there aren't any other restrictions that preempt that. I don't think there are, but the sending districts over, unless there's an emergency, should have full review and approval of capital spending over, I don't know, what's a boiler cost or something that of that sort. And we can discuss that later, what that number is, but
Okay.
that's
Good placeholder. Yep.
that's the idea.
Okay. Here about filling vacancies, there's a comment you had here under membership. I think we had a special meeting on that, Chuck, making sure the terms are set. And then obviously we know there's individuals that occasionally as board members may resign or step aside. So therefore a vacancy opens up. So that I guess language is needed to help.
Yeah, and a process. During our last discussion, I had asked, and it was I think it was the board, JOC board secretary, to work with the districts to get a process so everybody knows at all times whose term ends where. And that hasn't happened. So we need to put define it in the process, and then we have to get the process executed between the board secretaries and get that agreed to.
Okay.
Not only in here, but there's an action item that's open as well.
Okay, good. Moving further along, the operating budget. This is relevant to the approval of the operating budget. It says you put a note in here, Chuck, about needs clarification to ensure the tech school doesn't exceed its submitted and approved budget. And you're referencing this past year's budget did not comply because there was a kitchen renovation not included. You want to know if you want
to? Correct. I'm sure it was discussed and in one revision of the budget, they did put some capital in there, which was taken out. So the kitchen renovations were never approved from a finance standpoint. And there's nothing that governs the technical school from exceeding its approved budget. And it doesn't say it anywhere in there. So they're not doing anything that violates the terms in that respect, but we need to put it in there so it doesn't happen.
Yeah, but here up front, the first sentence, I was confused by this because it says up here that all operations of the technical school shall be within the limits of the annual operating budget adopted. So in my mind, that would indicate, I don't know, Dawn, if there's something that's not here, but you shouldn't exceed the budget, right? Isn't that sort of what that infers? Or
I would take it to mean that, I know Mr. Shermer is referring to the fact that according to PDE, they have different rules than we do, and they can exceed their budget. So maybe we just need to be a little clearer in here.
okay,
And you're right, Glenn, but PDE, it's really cut and dry with PDE, and it's not here, so.
okay, gotcha. All right, moving ahead. I think if I recall, Dawn, too, I received a comment on the average daily membership. Not sure, is there any comments that we have as a sending school district on the average daily membership? Is this working, the calculation currently? I know this is a recent change. One of the reasons why this amendment exists today is because there was a change to the ADM. I'm not sure if, has that been pretty clear in communication back and forth?
So my understanding is that they do the last 5 years, and they do an average daily membership when they create the budget and prorate it out for the different school districts. I think everyone's aware of it, and it hasn't changed. I don't believe either of the other two school districts has an issue with the ADM.
Okay, I just figured I would ask it, make sure it's working. There was a parentheses in here. I crossed it out here, so I'll just highlight it too. Fund balance. No. It says 8%. I know that there was discussion on fund balance a lot during prior board meetings. Chuck, is there any thoughts on that 8% or the fund balance in general?
I think 8% is fine, whether it's 8 or 10 or 12. That I have less energy on that, but it's important that they maintain that in case we're in a situation like now, where the state once again is right on top of the budget, and we may get money in September if we're happy. And frankly, it would be interesting to find out, Dawn, make sure that the tech school has money to make it to September. Because from what I understand, that's going to be the earliest that we'll see it. So, but yeah, I think 8% is okay. You know, obviously that for emergencies or something, we can back them up.
Okay.
I think.
And Dawn, I know there was a recent legislative from, I think, the PDE that came out. I assume, I don't know if you could elaborate, Dawn, because I know we're privy to some of this information for those viewing from home. What are the impacts of what happened recently at the state to the local school districts? There's I assume, a few month delay in getting funding.
Well, they did not pass the budget technically. So no funds that are part of that general appropriations are going to be set out. So for example, basic ed, special ed, transportation subsidies, none of those will go out. The state property reduction payment that you get half in August, that will go out because it's not actually a part of that budget. And also the ESSER funding will continue.
Gotcha. And that's one of the reasons why we need a healthy fund balance.
But net we're going to be given a bridge for state funding, right, Dawn?
So the only thing that I received was basically if you were unable to pay your debt service, PDE would pay that on your behalf until funding came through. When you say a bridge, what do you mean?
A float to make up for the funding, like the ESSER funds and that stuff that's not. be available?
You can do a tax anticipation note if you needed to do one as a district. But I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you needed to.
Well, right. No, I'm not saying, I'm just, what I'm saying is that people are gonna have to borrow money.
Yeah, there are districts who are not going to be able to go 3 months. And then, they say September, it might take a little bit for all of that to get through. So other districts might be in the bad spot at the moment.
Okay, all right, cool.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. So going down further, you worrying, yeah, so this goes back, Chuck, to the up above as well, capital expenses, make sure there's a certain amount, almost like limits of authority that the sending districts are comfortable with. And then after that limit, or is it over, or an expenditure is going to be over that limit, that they have to go to the sending school districts to get approvals. Understood.
Right, and I guess, once we go out and ping the other districts, hey, what do you think? What's the number? Get the business folks in, get the other superintendents, and they can all make a suggestion. We can make a reasonable decision.
Yep, good, okay.
Just a comment on the fund balance, 8%. There was some discussion, at least in our board meetings, on whether it required up to 8% or the full 8%. So maybe, I don't know where everybody feels, if it's just that they want it to always be at an 8% and no greater, or sometimes it could be less than 8%. So that might just need clarity, because there was a lot of
It's a good point. I forgot that. We should clarify that.
Up to the beginning, so we have the fund balance
Down, I think it's down.
Sorry,
Down.
so one of the general headings. All right,
Down further.
there it is.
There it is.
So it shows, so there should be no greater than, or up to 8% instead of no greater than.
No greater than. You know what? Highlight that. And again, that's something there was energy on during the budget season. Do they want it to be at least 8%? Which I think is reasonable, or exactly what the number is. You want 10% is, somewhere around $1 million.
Okay.
So, but it doesn't really say either. It doesn't mandate that it has to be 8%.
No,
And it doesn't really mandate that it has to be refurbished all in a year. Even though I'm not sure that it was spent down with all 3 school board approvals.
right. No, you're absolutely right. We want to leave some fund balance there so they have flexibility in case disaster strikes. And again, I am open to whatever that number everybody agrees on. But it should be clarified, so the statement can't be made, well, the fund balance has to be 8%, because it doesn't really say that. That's the way we treated it, but it doesn't really say that.
Gotcha. A little clarification there. Understood. So let the good points. Agreed. Moving ahead, we talked about that one. Secretary. Okay, so here was a lot added language. I think before was just shall have administrative and supervisory jurisdiction over the technical school. I just added, I think it said chief administrator, call it consistent language, chief school administrator, but saying have primary and sole administrative and that jurisdiction over the tech school and the director. I think that's the language you included, Chuck.
Yep.
Okay.
He's in charge. The JSU should have input to him. Yeah, there's back and forth, and certainly interaction with the director, but the chief school administrator's got the certifications and all the regulatory requirements that we do not have. And that's why he's got to be in charge.
Okay.
Which is the way I thought it was, but
Gotcha. Okay. See here. Now, this is language I added because Dawn, I was asking about the budget presentation. We went through a number of back and forth on the budget presentation this past year and asking in our last meeting what worked that from prior years. And it sounded like when the business managers, I got the sense, met together quarterly or maybe more frequently, that was made everyone on the same page. So I added language in here in line with that about budgetary control and purchasing. The director along with the business manager of the technical school shall be responsible for ensuring. Now this is added to what was there before. And then this last sentence was just common sense practice that worked out well in the past. Just include it, as part of the articles is business manager at the technical school and business managers of each of the school districts shall meet quarterly and may meet more frequently in preparing budgets. Attendance at these meetings is limited to the business managers. Not sure if there's any other language there. Just throwing it out there.
That's fine. I would, if the business managers want to invite somebody, that's fine.
Okay.
The idea is to allow the business managers to and the business manager at the tech school to operate independently and work with each other and make sure that the data is the way that we want it and the amounts are in expectations and we get release of all of the data.
Gotcha. Okay. And that, Dawn, I think in past years has maybe worked out pretty good where the business.
Yeah, my understanding is that in past years they had met more often than once or something, and that it did help. So I think that all parties involved are going to be happy to meet together. In case you don't know, Lori's actually going over to Palisades to be the business administrator, so
Good.
she'll be on board.
Cool.
Good. And then I think that I posed the question last time, Dawn. It seemed like just how the budget came this past year, like there should be more planning up front so that the actual preparing next year's budget should occur October the year before, roughly. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say that starting in September, there should be some discussions about putting some meetings together for October and November. As an example, I know that Palisades tends to not do the resolution, and they tend to have to do a preliminary budget, which is due in January. So they are working on presenting their budget in November sometimes. So I think that it would be important that we start meetings end of September, beginning of October in dealing with next year's budget to kind of come together.
Okay, good.
It would be good. I mean, we're restricted. We have to make a call very early in January if we're going to use exceptions for the next year, and we have a relatively good estimate on what we expect to spend the next year, and from that we make a decision whether we're going to raise taxes for the exceptions or not. So to have a reasonable preliminary budget in December or January is not asking too much.
Good. Okay. And it just is, clarification on approval by the joint operating committee. I think that was good language you added, Chuck. It was just saying after approval by, you're saying who approves it, the JOC. Going down here, quotas. Any comments on quotas? Dr. Hoffman, I know you've been working with quotas and ADMs. It seems to be working out okay. That information they're exchanging.
Sorry. Yeah, I think that the question in terms of the quota really came up this year, less about what the rules state and more in terms of what our district was asking. So how many students did we want to send there? Did we understand that if we were given more seats and sent more students, that there was going to be, 4-year associated cost with that. So we did here that we were okay to move forward with those additional seats. So we have placed somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 more students next year than last year. And I just today got, 3 more spots that we can fill if the board wishes for me to do that. So I'm not sure that this section, as I read it, really applies to anything that would be of concern. It's more just what does our new superintendent and this board think about, how many students should we be sending there?
Good. Okay, great. And then this goes back to the norms of the past, more frequent meetings. And it looks like I think in discussion, Dr. Hoffman, we talked last about the superintendents meeting regularly, like monthly. So I added language here about the superintendents of each school district shall meet monthly, and that the meeting should be limited to the superintendent. So I added language there. It's up for discussion, but just to have a placeholder that those meetings should occur more frequently, which was a good practice in the past that worked well for the sending districts.
Yeah, just make that assistants, superintendent's assistants or their designate.
So
That would be.
or their designated representative.
Yeah, so, in case Dr. Freeman can't make it, Dr. Hoffman can go, and that way there's no discussion while you're only a
Yep.
assistant superintendent. I don't, so, it'll happen.
Yeah. Their designated representative. Okay.
Again, the idea is to
Get together.
make sure that the folks that are talking can have an open exchange with what they see without any pressure to toe any specific narrative.
Good. Okay. General Advisory Committee looked pretty good. Occupational Advisory Committee, good committees. You had a note here on real estate. Looks like something
Yeah.
happened recently, or is that?
And the technical school entered into a lease agreement with a company, which I frankly think it's a good program, and I don't want to upend that. However, once again, it's, ready, fire, aim. The technical school does not have title to the property. So the question is, and I believe it's true, that the lease is not valid because they don't hold title to the property. So the sending school districts have to be the lessor, right? Lessor. And again, we got to get the paperwork squared away if that's true, which again, I would fully support. But, once again, it's something that was a pretty significant item. It was acted on and a significant lease. When the tech school doesn't have title to the property, the sending school districts do, and they're the ones that need to approve it. So I'd like to get
that agreement revised then.
well, get the agreement revised, but I would like Jeff to talk with Upper Bucks Legal and see what they come back with. But my energy is to get the proper title holders on the paperwork.
Yep. Okay. Makes sense. See here, I mean, that's pretty much it. So there's a couple of points that we talked about last, and not sure if we want, there's language in here to add somewhere, but I think there was reference that the high school principals or the high school administration would get together at the sending districts collectively, in addition to superintendents meeting, in addition to business managers. And that goes back more into line with more frequent meetings and norms and communication. Not sure if it's sufficiently happening today. Does that need to, I'm not sure, Dr. Hoffman, do you see that happening today? Did it happen in the past the same way?
To the best of my recollection, in the time that I've been in the district, the meetings were as follows. There was a monthly meeting with the superintendents.
Yeah.
There was a monthly or bi-monthly, it changed over the years, meeting with high school principals. Certainly, the high school principals also are in contact a lot more when there are, any type of issues perhaps, or around scheduling times. But they at least had bi-monthly meetings, and then there were quarterly meetings for pupil services, assistant superintendents, and then the business managers. Sometimes over the years, I think 2 directors ago, the meetings that happened for pupil services also happened with the assistant superintendents. They kind of joined together for some of those meetings. So there's been a few different iterations. I would say that what we don't want to have happen is what happened this past year, which is that basically nobody met, or we met once only when we kind of said we're coming over to meet.
Yeah, we had to.
And so I think as long as there's some language in there that regular meetings could occur, I would hope we could all work together as a team to figure out which groups would best meet. I don't know that we need to get so specific to name every single group that needs to meet personally. Of course, that, I'm just one person, but I just think the idea of making sure that there's a general understanding that if the meetings aren't happening, we're not going to make any forward progress.
No, I absolutely agree. I don't want to drill too far down. And that's part of the reason why that we make the superintendent of record, the chief school administrator, and he can make the call. Hey, why don't we meet so many times a year and have the high school principals in, but give the chief school administrator the responsibility to the board, and that will help things with communication and putting a regular communication process in place.
Good. Okay. And then I know I put as a major category education, and certification was discussed in the past. Dr. Hoffman, is there language in there that would be beneficial to have in the articles agreement, or a way or a process to help with certifications to make sure that students are on track with the new graduation requirements?
Sure. I think that this is another one of those topics where if we could get together and talk about it, it would be more beneficial than actually writing it down. I understand that there are certifications that our students are receiving, and I'm thrilled with that, of course. I know that a lot of our students, the certification that they receive is an OSHA certification, which is certainly important. I'm not, saying that it's not, but in some of the programs, I think there are probably certifications that are out there that would be more in line with what we're looking for our students to leave with, beyond just a basic, safety certificate. So what we've really been asking for from the tech school is a list of those certificates by program. If that exists, I still don't have a copy of it, but that would be really helpful for me, and I'm sure for the other districts as well, to take a look at what that curriculum is that's being taught and what those certifications are. So I think one of the things that we might do is, look to our next superintendent of record to try to get some of these meetings in place and get a list together for us to view. That would be, I think, all that needs to happen. That the certifications are so rapidly changing. The rules from the state are rapidly changing, as we know, and I'm not sure that putting something specific in would be helpful if it might continue to change. But just for anybody who may be watching that has a student there, an example would be in the automotive program. They have a very robust listing of all the certifications that the students can receive through an outside provider. I'd be looking for something similar to that for students who are in all programs.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. Have the superintendent of record come up with, well, here's the list, and if they do change and the state changes like the wind, but have that. Maybe we incorporate it in the yearly goal or the next year's goal, or but again, have the targets for the certifications communicated and delineated, and then it's also a source of measure too on how well the tech school educates as far as training goes. So, and that can be roadmap, but I think that would be another good tool to use as well.
Good. Okay. I think I know it was only 2 weeks ago, but we were going to start looking at maybe articles of agreement. I think, Mike, you had made a comment, try to look externally as well. If there's any language, I didn't come across or have the time since I was on vacation to look at other articles of agreement from tech schools. But if there's anything of interest, feel free to share it with the committee at any given time. We could consider it. I think we covered most of the topics that we had talked about last. Not sure if I'm missing anything, but I just figured wrap up, sort of have a short committee meeting, open discussions, and talk about what's been working or what we can improve upon.
I have not got a hold of Jim Hallowell, and we just keep missing each other. So if I get your copy of this, Glenn, and we can get this out to some folks over in Penn Ridge as well. Hey, what do you think? You know, here's what we're thinking, and you know, maybe we can get some feedback.
Yeah, I think what we'll do for just Chuck, because just follow good practice is we'll have a committee report to our board.
Okay.
And get feedback from our board first before we share it to others.
Okay. No. All right. You're right.
And then we'll just, and then once we get feedback from the board, if it's, good for us to move ahead, we'll move ahead collectively as a board.
Yeah. And I get it to Matt and have him take a look at it, because, he's next up as far as chief school administrator, and I'm sure he's drinking through a fire hose right now. So.
Yep. Understood. Okay.
So, just Glenn, on
Mike.
your comment, I did find some things in some of the other tech school agreements that I will forward over to you. And I agree, we should put this through our board. The communication issue just seems to be a constant theme here, to keep the administration involved in running this, and seem to have been circumvented a little bit recently. And the tech school becoming sort of an independent operating entity, which needs to be kind of reined back in. So I think the mandatory meetings and the communication between the administration and the budget office and the Blairs will help cure a lot of this, but all the stuff that we've talked about changing are definitely things that need to be changed.
Good. Okay. Excellent. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone joining. I'm not sure if there's any other items that we didn't touch upon. I thought we covered most of it in the last two brief meetings that we had. So I appreciate everyone taking their time on July, when we're typically off, to join virtually here. And anything else comes up, feel free to reach out to me, and I think we're in good shape to have something to discuss at our next board meeting.
Good deal.
Good. Have a good one. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. See you, Don. See you, Doc.